a year ago, I received an invitation via email to participate in the first teacher's workshop at USC with the Shoah Foundation. And thanks to a very generous grant by the Leach-Tag Family Foundation, it made it possible for myself and 3 other teachers from San Diego to go to USC for a week and learn more about the Shoah Foundation. I had heard about it in the past. I hadn't researched much of it on my own, but when I saw what they did, that they had all these testimonies available, I knew this is something that I wanted to take part in. I knew this was something that I wanted my teaching to go in that direction. I've been fortunate enough to have a Holocaust survivor speak to every class, or at least at every school I've taught at. And I know, and we all know, that that's not going to be the case for 10, 20, 30 years into the future. I've been also fortunate to teach and live in major cities where there are Holocaust survivors available to come to the classrooms to share their stories with children. That's not the case if you live in some parts of the United States where, in a smaller city. So I wanted to see what the future had in store for teaching the Holocaust, for me personally and for other teachers. And so I took this opportunity and I was blown away. I mean, as you can see, to go to USC and learn that there were 52,000 people who gave their testimony, over 100,000 hours of video. So during the week we learned what there was, in this vast amount of video, how we could use it. You think I need a microphone? My wife says I need a microphone, and we all know you gotta listen to your wife. So, I just like talking with my hands. Now I lost my place. So, we learned that through the work of the Shoah Foundation, that not only they have accumulated over the 100,000 hours of video, but it's now been digitalized and archived, where we can go in and we can put in a key term like hunger, and every single survivor who is interviewed or person who gave eyewitness account, it will bring up their testimony. And for those of you who have ever used YouTube, it's very similar to that. You put in the video YouTube, or put in a topic in YouTube, and lots of videos come up. And that's what it does in the archive. And then we were given the chore of creating a lesson. A lesson. We didn't get off easy, and then the response is, wait a minute, I gotta create a lesson out of 100,000 hours of video? Where do you start? My first step was, I wanted it to embody the mission of the Shoah Foundation, as you can see in front of you. Yeah, I wanted to embody that, and in addition to that, I wanted a message to be told. I wanted these eyewitnesses to tell not their story, but to deliver a message to my students, and also I wanted it to be something that interested me greatly. And something that's always interested me when I've gone to the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles or Washington, D.C., was when you come out and towards the end, they have the plaque of the righteous among the nations. It's always interested me so much. I look at those plaques and I say, why? Why so few did the right thing? How come the great majority took part in the evil that was perpetrated while so few did what was right? And it doesn't only, and I didn't only look at it in terms of the Holocaust, but in other things, such as whether it's Kigali, Rwanda, or Bosnia in Sarajevo, in Bosnia, or whether it's the Freedom Riders in the South. Why is it that these people do the right thing? So with that, I created a lesson to share with my students. And the lesson I'm going to show you right now, I want to deconstruct it for you. It's not a message, it's not supposed to be a downer. It's supposed to be an uplifting one, and also to reflect and look at ourselves about doing the right thing. Look at ourselves as being responsible individuals. In addition to that, I also, lost my train of thought again. It's hard after a whole day of teaching, I think. So with that, I think I should just get to the lesson. So the way the lesson is constructed is, I start with this video. And this video, as you're going to see, this woman, Mrs. Traub, It has her information on it to give the kids some background. Oh, I know what I forgot what I was going to say. The students I teach 8th graders. Sorry for the backtrack. The students who watch this lesson, review the lesson, they're already very familiar with the Holocaust. Because of the English department, they've read Night by Elie Wiesel. They have also read The Book Thief. That was some of their summer reading, which is about a young girl in Germany during the Holocaust. In addition to that, we had a survivor come in and speak to the children, and Dr. Eager is here today, so thank you so much for joining us. And she shared her story and had a wonderful message for our students. And then we went to the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles. And so our students had a strong foundation in the Holocaust. And also, I must not forget, my colleague and I, we gave them the historical background of the events leading up to Hitler's rise and the events that led up to the Holocaust. So they came the day after we went to the Museum of Tolerance. My colleague and I, Mary Young Dean, she and I, we shared this lesson. So they came in knowing a lot already, and I wanted the video, the testimony itself, to serve as a lot of context for them. I didn't want this to be a teacher-driven lesson. I wanted the students and the testimonies to interact, and I would talk once in a while. So I start off, and it's built this way, where they learn a little bit about the person speaking. As you can see, there's some pictures of this lady during her youth, prior to the events that took place. So with that, I'm going to start us off, and we're going to listen to Mrs. Traub, and ask you this as you are listening to her. Think about reasons why nobody was there to help her and her family.
And they started to force us to march to the ghetto. The ghetto was in the Jewish section of the town, which was on the other side of the town.
Were your neighbors aware of what was going on?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Those very neighbors in whose courtyard I played as a child, those very neighbors who were guests at my mother's dining room table months before, peeked through the windows and turned their faces. And as I look back now, strange that it pains me so much. That track through the main street, in the middle of the street, driven like cattle, with the valises, with the baggages, with my little nieces, with the little infant who was 5-6 weeks old, being driven to that Corso where my father had a big business, where people would come to buy, would tip their hat and say, "How do you do, Mr. Fishman?" and turn to my mother and say, "How are you?" Nagyságos asszonyom, which is a very respectful way to address a lady in Hungarian. "How are you, my lady?" These very people who used to watch me bicycle through town and say, "Babuka, you have the first girl's bicycle," because they never saw a girl's bicycle, you know, without a handbar. These neighbors who used to pinch my cheek when I was a little girl, they stood and watched, stony-faced, as we were driven to this town, with the Hungarian gendarmes using truncheons on old people who couldn't walk fast enough. It was so shameful, so humiliating. But I know now that the shame was theirs, not ours. But I didn't know it then. And so we got to the ghetto.